Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Deep Dive Perspective. We're going to discuss Palestine. Not only have we had to tolerate genocide, Holocaust, starvation is now on the menu. We've seen literally live streamed starvation of children, women and others. And of course, there comes a point when everybody has to do something, and people are doing what they can in spite of the governments and their genocidal negligence of Palestinians. And with me, not in the studio, but live from the flotilla, the Sumud Flotilla, which is out in the Mediterranean, we indeed have people who are doing something, and they've been compelled to do it because national leaders have failed time and time again. And I'm really honoured to welcome to the show Tadhg Hickey, comedian and pro-Palestinian activist, and somebody who is really says himself that I'm compelled to do this, not because we're looking for just a cheap hit, which is what some people, I think, in the business of the pro-Palestine movement have started doing, and there are increasing aspects of this which are being investigated on the British scene. But Ty, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Honoured, man. Thank you much to us.
So Ty, tell me why you're on the flotilla. What made you do this? Because the danger is real. The threat is real. The Israelis have said they're not just going to detain people for short periods this time. It could be far worse. And we all still remember the Mavi Maro, in which 10 people were murdered by the Israelis. So this is no joke. What's made you do this?
Good question. When kids, families, and that when I told that but I think you in your introduction, you've had 2 years of just the most baffling bitter at watching Western governments not just turn the other way. I mean, that was too might stay. They turn the other way. They're active participants in genocide, and especially from an Irish perspective, they're active participants in famine. And keep in mind, there's 26,000 people on this flotilla. So it's certainly not me covered or crazy left or anything like that. There's a mass of people around the world that have just had enough, particularly Western hypocrisy and the weakness of, for instance, Arab leaders, Western leaders, US particularly, I suppose. And if the governments aren't going to act, then we're doing things into our own hand. I see a lot of social media people once for racism. If I ask people that, and if I wanted to the chat, if he asked me to do something, I'm not. We've had lots of words for years that haven't really changed alone, and so, and it's important to say as well, like there's a big history to it. I mean, people have organized villas almost as long as there has been the blockade on Gaza, so just following in the footsteps of others. And you know, I'm honoured to be here as well. I'm very privileged because there's many of our Palestinian brothers and sisters can't go on boats to Gaza. Imagine that, some lad from Cork can sail to Gaza or at least attempt to break the siege. And many Palestinians can't because, you know, as well as I do, they would have targets and they're going to put everyone else in the boat at risk. I mean, what sums up and epitomises the injustice of the occupation more than that?
The fact is that the Israelis have demonstrated clearly something they managed to cover up for decades, this kind of bloodlust, this barbaric, almost kind of uncivilized display of hatred for Palestinians. And of course, starvation is the last trick in the book that they've got. When they started to cut off the aid, is that when you became even more triggered to say you had to do something even more?
Maybe, you know, I also felt there was an opportunity to really rally people in terms of the narrative, because there seemed to be something about the starvation campaign that alerted people who maybe weren't as active when people were being blown up, but suddenly were sort of activated, or their humanity was activated when they saw people starving to death. And to be honest, I welcome that. I think we can nitpick about when people came in on the dialogue after the genocide ends. For now, we just need all hands on deck. There was a moment where Bob Geldof started speaking out, and like, to be fair, Bob Geldof has kind of access to a maybe more conservative, older audience that will think, well, if Bob Geldof's talking about it, it must actually be a thing now. I mean, it's a tragedy and it's pure Orientalism and racism that they won't just listen to Palestinians who have been telling them for 2 years that it is a genocide, it is ethnic cleansing. It's sad and it's depressing, but it's maybe reality. They had to wait until Bob Geldof confirmed it. But as an Irish person, I agree with you. There's something in my bones, in my DNA, when we see a population being starved to death because the occupying force believes that it's ethnically superior to that population. Of course, there's an uncanny comparison between Palestine and my country at that point. If an Irish person doesn't see themselves in the starving men, women and children in Gaza, I would question if they're Irish at all, to be honest with you.
Well, interestingly, you talk about Ireland. The history of Ireland with empire has an overlap with a lot of what I guess the experience of the East has on the one hand. But I also noticed that the Prime Minister of Ireland has gone one stage further. And I was quite surprised. But he's now also talking about military intervention to stop this starvation. What do you think about that?
To be honest, man, I would take with a grain of salt everything the Irishman says, because they're really good at saying like things and declarations, but in terms of meaningful action, I go back to the French she talked about Norway, Spain, Ireland, and they're really pro-Palestine, but in real terms, and that's shameful. I think these are experts at kind of standing on the back of these people who are wonderful solidarity. Really, they don't bring it with Israel. Little airport to be by American airplanes for the genocide. The recent central bank of Israel bonds was funded. So, to be honest, I'm sick to the kind of allowing people to take back and do all that work. And I before after saying all the Irish people, captain and crew and part and really love not saying that. Like, that's wrong. My 14-week-old daughter now. If the Irish government actually stand up and do something meaningful, like sanction Israel instead of just making pretty speeches. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. They've also not given us our blessing for being here. You know, the Colombian president has endorsed the, whereas the Irish government, as was very weak and is waiting for government to fall. I'm sure the government, Flotilla, then they never leave, they all follow us. That's just a bit disappointing.
And turning to the people on the actual flotilla, the last count I had were at least 50 ships and from at least 44 different countries. That's a real diversity, a real variation. Did you meet most of these people in Barcelona? And what was the spirit? And what's the spirit that you're sensing within this flotilla?
Oh man, the spirit is. It's like nothing that I've ever experienced before in Barcelona, with thousands of people on the streets to wish us off. And I mean, it really is like it's global, as you say. You know, sometimes you feel like the pro-Palestine kind of movement is just little hubs here and there. But in Barcelona, between the people wishing us off and the actual participants, there was people from all creeds and colours and countries around the world, delegates from, and every delegation went up and spoke about their own personal connection to Palestine and why they're doing what they're doing. And like, I think a really exciting thing as well, that's worth saying, is that this feels like the beginning of something as opposing in itself. Like the organisation to get this going in 2 months, to have 44 delegations, participants all over the world, and multiple ports involved. I really, really, truly believe, and the passion of the organisers would tell me that this is just the start, you know. And the idea is like you develop a humanitarian corridor, and that boats come after you. And it's the kind of relentlessness and the persistence, I think, that really will give the entity something difficult to think about. Far from it being a kind of a one-off selfie yacht expedition where people get their content and then go home and get their certificate for trying to break the siege. I just want to play my little part in the kind of handing the baton. Like, I'll just pass it on to the next Irish crew behind me, and so on and so forth. And maybe I might be able to go for a couple of months or whatever, and then somebody else will go. To sum up, we're not stopping. We're absolutely not stopping, because supporting Palestine is for life. It's not just for clicks on the internet, you know. Like any Irish person as well who is accused of kind of standing with Palestine because it's the new trend should take a walk around the Falls Road in West Belfast, where you'll see more Palestine flags than you will Irish tricolours, like, you know. So the connection is deep and it's meaningful and it's real.
So I mean, your own profession. I mean, I don't want to bring it down to that because, of course, this goes beyond it. The fact is that people are being cancelled, censorship is there, social media and all this business of monetary linkage to professionals, access to mainstream media. None of that seems to have bothered you in taking a decision like this, because there are consequences and they keep threatening these consequences, and many people are being arrested even in Britain now for simply expressing support of, for instance, Palestine Action. Anything to do with Palestine is now literally off the record, is well, makes you persona non gratis. Does that scare you in any way?
No, I've been persona non gratis for a long time, like, so it's nothing new for me. No, I feel like, we have to keep remembering that the amount of people that would support a kind of Orientalist, racist perspective that you get, particularly in British and American media, the people that would support that are they're few. We are the many. Like, the amount of people who would support fighting back against imperialism and doing your own thing and not kowtowing to the corporations, that's the majority. Like, I'll give you one example. Yeah, I'm going to find it difficult to get, like, work with BBC or Netflix or any of that kind of stuff. But, like, the next time I do a tour, I'm going to hopefully go to places like Beirut and whatnot, because there's this culture in the West of when you do a world tour as a comedian, you basically do America, Britain and Australia, and then you feel like you've done the world. Whereas actually you've just gone to a few ex-British colonies in Britain. So, like, my world tour would be hopefully truly the world. Like, I mean, if I could get to places like Venezuela and Cuba and Palestine and stuff like that, would be where I'm aiming for. There's a big world out there outside of the US and the British corporations, like, I can tell you that.
And so now on the boat, what's it been like for the last couple of days? Because you've never done a boat journey like this, I assume. So has it been a bit of a shock?
I mean, it's definitely a shock in terms of my big bald white head. Like, it's just getting absolutely frazzled. Like, so the practical stuff I will always struggle with. That's kind of my temperament. But I suppose my heart and soul would be so in the cause that I would be looking at the big picture. And there's nothing special about me. Like, on the boat I'm on, there's 23 other people. Everyone has blended really, really well. We have our jobs. More importantly, we have our drills. We're drilled into doing the right thing and preparing for all inevitabilities and permutations. And it probably sounds like a bit of a cliche, but there's just a lovely kind of bond between us, like, and everyone's just mucking in. Like, people are doing different errands as I speak to you right now, and I'm doing my bit of media, and then I'll do my bit of washing later. And, like, it's kind of like a commune kind of effect. I was saying in a video the other night that it feels a bit like silly Big Brother. Everyone is an anti and just a really nice person. So there are challenges, of course. I think when you're like, that's what the insults to people of being on a jolly. Like, most of the people here are not social media people. They're not, like, famous. They're not here to try and get a picture in the paper. They're dedicated anti-war, pro-humanity activists. Like, some of them going back decades, and some of them have been on previous flotillas. They've tried to break the siege before, and they haven't been, dissuaded by having the slander that you get when you go on this, or being accused of being a terrorist or anything like that. I think there's a collective thing in the world right now, to be honest, where everyone's like, we're just not buying it anymore. We're just not buying the Israeli nonsense, like that we're terrorists or we're looking for selfies. Or I think more and more people are kind of going, really? Like, can we all be wrong? Are all the accusations anti-Semitic? I really firmly believe in my heart that Zionism is on its last legs. And I think that's right and proper, because it's a poisonous, racist ideology, and I just don't think there's any reforming that. Like, it just has to be dismantled.
Well, Ben Gvir and Smodrich are just two of the names that keep popping up on the screen. And Ben Gvir, who's been advocating the starvation, and they've all been celebrating the starvation and the killing of the Amalek, all of these terminologies which nobody knew about before, really. Nobody knew these dark kind of dystopian, fascist, religio-fascist opinions that existed within certain strands of this so-called Judaism. Because many Jews will tell you that this is not Judaism. This is completely something dark and dystopian and different. But they're on your case as well, because Ben Gvir specifically said about your flotilla that he's demanding longer detentions. So that's something that you're being immediately affected by his kind of tyranny, I think, as well. What's your reaction to him and what he's planning for you?
Well, let's go back to international law. I mean, it's hard to talk Israelis anymore, because they're so outside of international law. They're so full of impunity, And I think there's a real darkness and a racism that underpins everything they do, that it's not really worth our time talking to them too much. I would more look at Western leaders that pontificate about international law. Threatening to put activists, like completely peaceful activists, carrying aid. I've just gone through some of the boxes of aid, and that most of it is baby formula for kids. Women and children are starving to death in Gaza right now. And a bunch of civilians are sailing to Gaza, completely non-violent, to try and get some baby formula in. We'll be in international waters. There's nothing illegal in what we're doing, because in accordance with the UN, the occupation itself is illegal. So it's now up to the world, I suppose. If the world wants to allow Israel to do whatever it wants to us, then that would be illegal, it would be immoral, it would be completely disproportionate, because again, we're peaceful, we are no threat whatsoever. It's up to international law. There's been so many moments over the last 2 years where I thought to myself, there's no way they'll allow them to do this. There's no way they'll get away with that. And unfortunately, all red lines have been passed. So I can't guarantee anyone that we're going to be safe. But I would just again stress, even if the powers that be have given up on international law, I still believe in it. I still believe in right and wrong. And maybe it's up to the people again, when the governments won't do it, it's up to the people to kind of resurrect international law and say, we're no threat to anybody. We're delivering aid. We're not doing anything illegal. So if Israel acts against us, that would be yet another war crime in the litany of war crimes we've seen over the last 2 years. I mean, I hope my Irish government, like, in spite of the fact that we probably have had a bit of water under the bridge, would step up and say, let's not let this guy who, you know, is a peaceful activist carrying baby formula to Gaza, let's not let him rot in some prison in Israel. Like, you know, I hope they'll show a little bit of spine, but I have my doubts.
You keep mentioning this notion of peace and peacefulness. You've actually undergone training during this trip, or prior to it, in terms of peace activism and actually being able to do things in a peaceful way, because they will try and project you as being violent. They're very good at that. It seems Israel can convert the most peaceful people into being terrorists, and that's a trick that they play over and over again. What have you done to be able to make sure that you project how peaceful this flotilla is?
Well, there was 2 days, like easily 2 days of the whole theme of the training being just that this is a peaceful method. And actually, if you don't believe that this is a peaceful, mission, if the tactic isn't purely non-violent, then you have no business on the mission. And people, may have been interviewed, I think. And if the organisers weren't 100% convinced that they were going to, posture as non-violent, then they wouldn't be allowed onto the flotilla. I mean, on a personal level, I suppose I was thinking, like, I've watched these people on my phone and on TV over the last 2 years literally murder friends of mine. At this point now, I have many Palestinian friends who have had their brothers, sisters, friends, loved ones murdered by this regime. You'd be forgiven for having some hatred in your heart for people like that. But if you're going to be part of a team, if you're going to be part of a collective, then you need to rein in your own personal feelings, because it will affect your comrades. So I suppose the training for me was to start making sure that I wasn't thinking about me and start thinking about we. Because if I was to do something like, try and be a hero or something like that, I'm going to affect people around me. And again, I have to say, we're so well trained in that. Like, I'm very, very confident if we do end up being intercepted, that I will behave accordingly in a non-violent way. And again, then it's also to say, though, that even though we're trained for it, we're planning to get the aid in. We're absolutely 100% committed to getting the aid in and reaching Gaza, because why wouldn't we? We're not doing anything illegal, and we're hoping to break an immoral, absolutely barbaric siege. So that's where my posturing is, first and foremost, that we're getting to Gaza, delivering aid, going home and opening up a humanitarian corridor where others can follow after us. That's our total focus is on that, but we will train for other possibilities, namely, more war crimes from Israel, more illegal interceptions and attacks. Perhaps, as you mentioned, they've already murdered people who have tried to make this voyage. And they are the most predictable, I would say, pathological regime in modern history. So we have to plan for everything. But our goal and our aim and our intentions is to deliver baby formula to starving women and children.
the two questions that come to mind. What was that non-violent training specifically? And also this corridor you're talking about, when you're in international waters, how do you propose to get this this food, these baby formulas and all the other things that you have on the flotilla? How will they be transferred to Gaza without going into Israeli or what I would call Palestinian waters?
Well, again, the UN protects us there because the UN has declared that the occupation is illegal. So for us to try and get to Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid, there's nothing illegal about that whatsoever. Between the multiple groups that have come together to form this flotilla, we have so many contacts and relationships with people on the ground in Gaza. We're not aiming to go in. We're not aid workers. We're civilians. But we have the mechanism, we have the structure, the infrastructure to get the aid to the people who will be able to distribute it on the ground in Gaza. That's absolutely doable. And again, all it needs is for Israel to stop murdering people. This is not a big ask to give up the fantasy of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is actually the Gaza Extermination Foundation. The jig is up with that. We know what you're trying to do: corral people into small spaces and then murder them as they kind of flail for some food. Just stop murdering people. Just allow aid in. Like starvation is a tool of war. I mean, this isn't a war; it's an extermination. But even if it was a war, using hunger as a tool of war is again illegal. It's another one of their war crimes. So that's the intention. And in terms of the humanitarian corridor, I think that's a basic thing. If we were talking about a white country, we wouldn't even be talking about how on earth are you going to do it or how can you open up this humanitarian corridor. It just wouldn't be allowed. There's just no way on earth that white children and mothers would be starving to death. It just wouldn't happen. This Western world would never allow it to happen. So then, because it's happening in a brown country, me or other people as part of the team will have to go on mainstream media and defend our idea of breaking the siege as if it's a fanciful notion. And I think the moral questioning should be on the West. It should be on Western leaders. It shouldn't be on, these civilians giving up a month of their life, spending their own money to try and get baby formula into Gaza. We have to take a helicopter view and say, how have we normalised this? How have we normalised that a bunch of civilians have to sail to Gaza with little or no sailing experience because the West won't get up off its... I don't know, I just get so frustrated at times. I actually can't believe we're living in this world. That just has normalised station in 2025. I thought that was a relic of the past, a relic of Irish history, but for that it be a reality right now, for the Western leaders so cowardly, it's actually unfathomable to me.
Well, 150 children, I think, and women and men have been killed for exactly what you're saying just over the last 48 hours. And this is consistent and constant, and it's been going on for nearly 2 years now. But it has been normalised. That's the reality of the matter. If the same number of children were killed in, say, Britain, in London on any given day, that would be international news. There'd be world leaders gathering. So there is an element of racism going on here, without a doubt. I mean, I think that we can't get away from that. Do you think Gaza has really outed so many issues that we in the West need to address?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think there's going to be a before Gaza and an after Gaza kind of almost point in history, and that Gaza has exposed everyone and has exposed everything. So for instance, a small example, if you've spent your time on Instagram saying, I support this cause and I support that cause, and changing your profile picture to Ukraine or whatever, and then you've been totally so silent on Palestine because if you speak up, it might affect your ability to make money and for your career to, reach its potential. Then you're at best an opportunist, and at worst you're a racist. Care about brown or black kids. You only care about kids that look a bit like you, and if you only identify with kids that look a bit like you, I think you're espousing the kind of philosophy that is all that's wrong with the world, which is what we call here in Ireland, I'm all right, Jack. I'm doing okay. My family are doing okay. So basically everyone else can just kind of die. Everyone else can just be killed, and it just doesn't matter that much. It's complicated. You know, some people are willing to buy the Israeli propaganda as well. Some people are willing to go, well, maybe they were all terrorists. You know, maybe all these children who were left to die and rot in incubators, maybe somehow they all had terroristic intentions, you know, because it makes people in the West, I think, sleep a bit better. Then they don't have to care as much. And that's the whole point of the propaganda. But at this point in the genocide, I think your average person on the street with a heart and a soul knows that the Israelis are full of shit. Like, let's cut it, you know, that the average person sees through that now. And I think the world is awake now. And you can either go back to sleep, you can go back to sleep if you want. But now that you're awake and you know better, you have to do better. And that personally is why I'm on this flotilla. And it's important to say as well, there's nothing heroic whatsoever about what we're doing. We're doing the bare minimum of what our governments won't do. They can do it, but they won't do it. We're not going as people who are trying to save Gaza or any of that rubbish. Like, we're trying to save our own souls, our own humanity. So, you know, it's important just to say it's easy to do. It's actually it's very easy to show solidarity with substance. Very, very easy. That sometimes it's not enough to just share stuff on social media or to go to a march. That's beautiful. That's brilliant. But unfortunately, it hasn't worked. It hasn't changed what's happening on the ground in 2 years. And we have to do more, because we're not just trying to stop the people being exterminated. We're trying to stop ourselves from losing our humanity completely. And I don't think there's any going back from that.
Well, I don't know whether you're a family man, but, you know, people have left their children and their wives behind and are now potentially putting themselves on the line. So there's no doubt that this is not a joke. But what I really like about some of what you've been putting out in the videos that I've seen is that you're not losing your own sort of humor and your sense of ability to be able to, you know, have fun as well, because there's this other kind of pseudo-sanctimonious kind of political resistance that you can do, where people try to always look morose and say, well, why can't you be laughing? Well, I know Palestinians who've been in the middle of that, the war crimes, who've been suffering, and still the children have smiles on their face. When they're getting arrested, they put smiles on their face, because it's an act of defiance to the fear and the demoralization that the Israelis want people to feel.
I couldn't agree more. The people I laugh with most in my home city in Cork are my Palestinian friends. Like, it's gallows humor has been a survival technique for people who've been victims of colonialism and whatnot, you know. So, like, as an Irish person particularly, and like my profession, I'm not going to change my temperament for any occupying force. I think the revolution can be fun. And to go on, as you said, to put on a face of sadness or whatever, I think is insulting in a way. It's like, I'm so sad because of Gaza, it's hitting me more or whatever. I know my intentions and I know my heart. And I think it's important actually for you to kind of stay as you are, to persist as you are, and not let yourself be kind of beaten down by it. I shouldn't be hanging my head in shame. It's the Western leaders should be hanging their heads in shame for what I'm trying to do my little bit to actually end the blockade and to stop the mass murder. I have no shame, and I'm not going to alter who I am. I think, as I say, it's the leaders of the world should be hanging their heads in shame, not me, you know. So, yeah, I don't get too bogged down in that. I mean, people are always going to say, like, oh, you should do this, or you should that, or you should do this. I just wish all those people that had so many notes for us, like, would put their energy into organising, you know, campaigns and civil disobedience and stuff. But anyway, that's maybe another conversation.
I've seen recently that Greta Thunberg has been taking a lot of the storm and the thunder from within the flotilla. Good luck to her. I mean, you can have all sorts of controversial views for and against Greta, but it's not about Greta. Friends like mine, Fra Hughes, I've known for many years, you know, author of Walking with Palestine, and a real hardcore activist and humanitarian. Yeah. He's with you as well, and probably you're able to do this interview because you can get him to do a bit more of the mucking out while I'll keep you talking and make him do a lot more work, hopefully. But there are great unsung heroes. At the moment, yeah. There's a lot of great unsung heroes, and this boat that you're on, it obviously belongs to somebody, and they put it at risk. It might be their life saving there as well, which is an amazing act as well.
Everyone's taking risks, you know, like everyone who's offering diplomatic support is taking risks. You know, there's a search and rescue boat that's going to support us. There's legal observers. They're all putting their careers on the line. I know there's other people who've been on boats who have been threatened physically. Their family have been threatened physically. Mm-hmm. And what I would say about that is, like, if somebody is threatening you because of what you're doing, it can't then be a meaningless selfie yacht expedition at the same time. Like, those two things can't coexist. So either it's a threat to Israel or it's not. And I would imagine if you're ringing up people in the middle of the night threatening their family, as I've heard other people have gone through this, you know, I think you're obviously very worried. And I think that's a good sign that what we're doing is meaningful and stuff. And the likes of Piers Morgan are probably barking up the wrong tree when they say, oh, what's the point of doing this or what's the point of doing that? In the case of Greta, I just want to say that, like, having spent a couple of days training with her, like, I don't think I've ever met somebody so dedicated, so humble, so resistant to the idea of being famous or whatnot. She just really wants to help. That's what she wants to do. She looks at a world where there's all these issues in it, and she wants to try and make a change. And I think particularly if you're an older white man and you're spending your time denigrating a young, passionate activist like Greta Thunberg, I think something has gone radically wrong. Especially people that accuse her of being in it for, like, the selfies and stuff. Like, she detests the whole selfie culture. She's just so clearly not interested in it at all, you know. So I always think it's particularly humorous that Piers Morgan, who's kind of made a career out of media attention and this kind of pseudo-narcissistic outlook on life, is the one accusing her. You know, every accusation is a confession, as they say.
Yeah, one finger you pointing means there are three pointing right back at you, and I think nobody more appropriate for that than Piers Morgan, Mr. Do you support Hamas? Has he ever invited you, Tadhg? Have you been graced with the invitations from the neoconservative Zionist-run media?
It's funny you should say that now. I was speaking to one of his producers right before, and it's a real tough one, you know, because, like, if it was up to me right now, I think I probably wouldn't bother talking to a lot of the media that I don't respect. And going forward in my own personal work, I'm going to try and boycott as many of them as I can. But, like, as part of this particular mission, if I'm not talking to media, then I'm not going to do my job. So again, I'm trying to fall into being a team player on this or whatever. But yeah, look, it would be a tough one, all right, I suppose, if he reached out, like, you know, it's for the cause, it probably would be good. But personally, I think, you know, him and others have played such an important role in manufacturing consent for everything that we're watching on our phones right now, that I think he's guilty of, you know, being part of that machine that made all this possible. And to be interviewed by somebody like that is almost like accepting them or recognizing them or whatever, you know. So I might have to just put my own personal feelings to the side, but it's a tough one for sure.
So, I mean, now just getting to the end of the show, because I've taken so much of your time, and I'm conscious that you're there sort of like having to do other things as well. I'd like to carry on. We could carry on chatting for another hour, I'm sure. But what's the plan from here on in, Ty? Is there a particular plan of action that you guys have got over the next day or two? And what's the timeline? What do you expect to happen?
So we're going to be heading off for Tunis pretty soon, and then there'll be a stop off, I think, in Tunis for provisions and whatnot, and then we're aligning ourselves with the many boats that are leaving from Tunis. There's more Irish getting on board as well, and the amount of Irish presence here is just, it's very heartwarming, I have to say. And so then from Tunis we kind of sail together. I think in total there's going to be something like 500 or 600 participants, and we head for Gaza. I probably have to talk to the captain, but I mean, you're talking maybe between 6 to 10 days or something like that to get to Gaza, and that's the crack. And our aim then is, as I say, I keep repeating myself, but it's worth repeating. If the Israelis are to do anything to us, be just worth people, you know, really reinforcing this in their head, that would be totally illegal. Do you know what I mean? The naval blockade that they have going on is illegal in accordance with international law. The UN has verified that time and time again. So what we're trying to do is completely legal. If we're intercepted in international waters, if we're attacked in international waters, that would be yet another war crime. So I like to live my life planning to do things without war crimes interrupting them. So my intention is to get there, deliver the aid, get out of there, and to see many, many boats follow behind us. You know, a conveyor belt of aid until the entity is ready, willing, and able to allow some sort of proper aid system to go in, and also to just end the occupation and the end the apartheid and end the mass murder and all that kind of stuff. That's obviously going to take time, but I would say that we're in it for the long haul. I hopefully can speak for the people on my boat anyway. They're certainly not going to abandon the Palestinian cause anytime soon, because as Nelson Mandela once said, it is the most just, the most moral cause of our time. And I think that sentence has never been truer than it is at this moment right now in history.
Well, Ty, it's been an absolute privilege talking to you. As I said, there are so many more questions, but I'm going to stop torturing you any longer. Good luck. Good luck with everything. Best of luck and to all of the crew and to the whole flotilla. We'll try and touch base again with you guys by the time things heat up, perhaps. And I'll definitely ask Fra to maybe send us some videos of other guys and what you guys are doing on the boat, just to give the world an idea of exactly what's going on. But thank you so much. That's a nice scene. That's not. But this is the calm before the storm.
Shot of my,
yeah. This is the calm before the storm. But hopefully there's no storm coming.
Yeah. Perfect, brother. Peace and love. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you very much, Type. So there we have it.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye, my friend. And there we have it. Tadhg Hickey and a vast flotilla, the biggest ever, going to Gaza, doing what any human being really ought to be doing. And I guess they're doing it in their way with the attached risks. We have risks too, for speaking truth. Increasingly, we're being surveyed and we're being monitored and we're being pinioned for our opinions. This is the reality of the world we're in. And it does seem as though it's the Zionist lobbies which hold influence to be able to make us all step back. But we shouldn't. The reality is there comes a point where you have to drop the fear and you have to drop the hasbara, which makes us go silent. If the people in Palestine are capable of taking all of that tyranny on and still stand strong with their children, then us saying a few things here and there really isn't a big deal. But cowardice in the face of tyranny and open violations will only lead to encouraging the tyrant to do it even more. The more we lay down, the more we accept and normalize the starvation, the famine, the genocide, the killing, the poisoning, the ecocide that's going on in Gaza. Mark my words, it's only a matter of time before that comes home to our own nations. Already, our nations are being pressured economically. We're already having to downsize. We've already got race riots being stoked up. We have surveillance capitalism encroaching our very liberty day by day. Our incomes aren't rising. The government is constantly throwing the blame on, again, migrants and the poor and the most vulnerable, while in reality, they're standing up for the very people who often are creating these circumstances. They're creating the genocides. They're creating the migration. They're creating the depopulation. And unless we are willing to wake up and stand up to it, the one that's going on in Gaza, it's coming to our doorstep, because that surveillance capitalism, that tyranny, is uniform across the parasite elitists who basically are trying to reconstruct our world, one portion of it being Palestine and Gaza. The rest of it is also on the agenda, I'm afraid. Thank you for watching this edition of the Deep Dive Perspective. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel, because without you, we can't carry on the kind of shows that we've been making and the kind of people that we're bringing on, and the sort of people like Tadhg Hickey, who are definitely going to be censored by mainstream Zionist-controlled media, which is 95% of social media as well as the terrestrial media. So we need your support. Please carry on liking, subscribing and sharing. And until the next show, goodbye.